My name is Charlotte Hayes. I'm 38 years old, and until last winter, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I lived in a weatherboard house on a quiet street in Lane Cove, on Sydney's lower North Shore. The kind of place where the jacarandas drop purple petals every November, and the neighbours still wave when they walk past with their dogs. I had a husband named Oliver, a little girl named Amelia who was 6, and a job as a part-time bookkeeper that I fitted around school drop-offs and my mother's chemo appointments. I thought that was enough. It wasn't. The first time I realized something was wrong was on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Amelia was at after-school care. Oliver was supposed to be working late at the accounting firm in the city. I was sitting at the kitchen table going through Mum's hospital bills when my phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Your husband is at the Meriton in Parramatta, room 1412. Thought you should know. There was a photo attached. Oliver, my Oliver, standing too close to a woman with dark hair and a red dress. His hand was on her lower back, the way he used to put it on mine when we first started dating 15 years ago. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat very still and listened to the fridge hum and the clock tick. Outside, a magpie warbled like nothing in the world had changed. I drove to Parramatta that night. I didn't go up to the room. I just sat in the underground car park for 40 minutes, staring at Oliver's dark blue Toyota, until my hands stopped shaking enough to drive home. When he came through the door at 11:30, smelling of hotel soap and someone else's perfume, I was already in bed with the light off. He kissed the top of my head and whispered that work had been mental. I said nothing. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in quiet collapse. I still packed Amelia's lunchbox with the little notes she loved. I still drove Mum to Royal North Shore for her treatments. I still cooked dinner and asked Oliver about his day. But inside, something hard and cold was forming. Then Mum died. It was sudden at the end. 1 minute she was complaining about the hospital coffee. The next her hand went slack in mine. The nurse said it was peaceful. I wanted to scream that nothing about watching your mother leave the world is peaceful when your marriage is already a lie. The funeral was at the Northern Suburbs Memorial Gardens. Oliver stood beside me, looking every bit the supportive husband. Amelia held my hand so tightly, her little knuckles went white. My younger brother Jack flew up from Melbourne with his wife Sophie. He hugged me too hard and said, "We'll sort the house later, Char. Don't stress." Mum's house was a modest 3-bedroom in Castle Hill, the place she'd lived for 32 years after Dad passed. It wasn't worth a fortune by Sydney standards, maybe 1.6 million on a good day, but it was paid off, and it was hers. She'd always said it would be split equally between Jack and me. 2 weeks after the funeral, Jack called. "Look, Char, Sophie and I have been talking. We've got the kids' private school fees and the mortgage on the place in Brighton. Mum's house is sitting empty. We think the fairest thing is to sell it and split the proceeds. 50-50, clean and simple." I was standing in my own kitchen, staring at the photo of Mum on the fridge. She wanted us to keep it in the family if we could. Jack's voice tightened. "That was years ago. Things change. Oliver said you'd be reasonable." "Oliver?" Silence. Then, "He's been helping us look at the numbers. He's good with this stuff." That night I waited until Oliver was in the shower and went through his laptop. The password was still Amelia's birthday. In his email I found a chain between him and Jack going back 6 weeks, before Mum even died. They were already talking about valuations, agent commissions, and how much each of them would walk away with. There was even a message from Oliver. "Charlotte's too soft. Once the grief settles, she'll sign whatever we put in front of her. The Parramatta thing stays between us." I closed the laptop carefully, like it might explode. The next morning, I did 3 things. First, I went to see a solicitor in Chatswood named Priya Sharma. She specialized in family law and estate matters. I told her everything. The affair, the emails, Mum's will. Priya listened without interrupting, then said quietly, "Under the Succession Act 2006 in New South Wales, if there's a valid will, the estate is distributed according to its terms. If someone tries to pressure a beneficiary, or if there's evidence of undue influence or joint enterprise to undermine the will, we have options. And under the Family Law Act 1975, any property settlement between you and Oliver will look at contributions, future needs, and what is just and equitable. Timing of inheritances matters a great deal. Second, I went to the bank and opened a new account in my name only. I redirected my pay and the small amount Mum had left me in a term deposit. Third, I started documenting everything. Dates, times, screenshots. The hotel receipt I found crumpled in Oliver's suit pocket. The messages. The way he suddenly became very interested in helping with Mum's paperwork. Jack pushed hard for a quick sale. Oliver started talking about how we needed the money for Amelia's future, how the market was cooling, how we should be practical. Every time he said we, something inside me flinched. One night, Amelia crawled into bed with me. She was supposed to be asleep. "Mummy," she whispered, "why does Daddy smell different now?" I held her until she fell asleep, and for the first time since the photo arrived, I cried. Silent tears into her hair, not because of Oliver, because my little girl had already noticed the world shifting under her feet. 2 months after Mum's death, Jack and Sophie flew up again. We met at Mum's house to discuss the estate. Oliver came with me, all-concerned husband. Jack had brought a contract from a local agent. The proposed sale price was low, deliberately low, I realized later, so they could push it through fast. I looked at the papers, then at my brother. "I'm not signing anything today." Jack's face darkened. "Don't be difficult, Char. Mum's gone. We need to move on." Oliver put a hand on my shoulder. "Babe, it's just practical." I shrugged his hand off. Practical would have been telling me about room 1412 before Mum died. The silence that followed was absolute. Sophie's eyes went wide. Jack looked at Oliver like he'd been punched. Oliver recovered first. "That's private. And irrelevant." "Is it?" I stood up. "Because the emails between you two started while Mum was still in hospital. While I was sitting beside her bed every day. While you were both already dividing her house." Jack tried to bluster. "You're emotional. You're not thinking straight." I smiled, and it felt like ice. I've never thought more clearly in my life. That night, Oliver didn't come home. He texted that he needed space. The next day, a process server handed me an application for property settlement. Oliver was seeking 60% of our joint assets, including any interest I had in Mum's estate, on the basis that he had been the primary earner and I had limited future earning capacity. Priya was ready. We filed our response. We disclosed everything: the affair evidence, the emails with Jack, the timeline showing Oliver had been planning financial moves while I was caring for a dying parent. Under the Family Law Act, the court looks at contributions of all kinds: financial, non-financial, homemaker, parent, carer. It also looks at future needs. Who has the care of the child? Who has the greater earning capacity? Who has suffered disadvantage? And inheritances received late in a relationship, or after separation, are often treated as the contribution of the person who received them, especially when the other party has made no contribution to them. Mum's will was clear: equal shares to Jack and me. No mention of spouses. Jack tried to argue I was being unreasonable, that families should stick together. I simply forwarded Priya the email chain. The pressure got worse before it got better. Jack stopped answering my calls. Sophie sent a long message about how I was destroying the family. Oliver's lawyer sent letters implying I was unstable. One afternoon I came home to find Oliver had taken Amelia for the weekend without telling me first. I stood in the empty house and felt something close to panic, until I remembered the parenting plan we already had in place, and the fact that kidnapping isn't something the family court looks kindly on. I called Priya. She made one phone call. Amelia was returned that evening. The turning point came in mediation. We sat in a conference room in the city with a mediator, both solicitors, and the 2 men who had decided I was soft. Oliver looked tired. Jack looked angry. I looked like a woman who had spent months documenting every lie. Priya laid out the case calmly. The affair, the emails proving a joint plan to undervalue and rush the sale of Mum's house. The years I had spent as primary carer for Amelia, and then for Mum, reducing my own career. The fact that any interest I had in Mum's estate was a late inheritance, to which Oliver had contributed nothing. Oliver's lawyer tried to argue contributions. Priya simply opened a folder and began reading dates of hospital visits, school pickups, unpaid overtime I never claimed. the way I had managed the household while Oliver built his career. Jack tried one last time. She's my sister. This is family. I looked at him across the table. Family doesn't plan the sale of their mother's house while she's still breathing. Family doesn't side with the man who's cheating on their sister. You chose a side, Jack. Live with it. The settlement took another 6 weeks to finalize, but the outcome was clear. Oliver received a fair share of our joint assets based on actual contributions, nowhere near the 60% he wanted. The court noted the non-financial contributions and the care of Amelia. My interest in Mum's estate was treated as mine. Jack had no legal claim beyond his own half. We sold Mum's house eventually, at proper market value, not the lowball figure Jack and Oliver had wanted. I used my half, plus the settlement funds, to buy a smaller place further north, near the water. Nothing flash, just quiet. A backyard where Amelia could play. A second bedroom for when she stayed with her father under the new parenting orders. Oliver remarried within a year, the woman from the hotel. I heard through mutual friends that the relationship was already strained. Money has a way of revealing people. Jack and I don't speak. Sometimes that still hurts. Mostly it feels like clean air after years of smoke. Amelia is 8 now. She still asks about Grandma sometimes. I tell her the truth, gently, that Grandma loved her more than anything, and that the house on the hill is gone, but the love isn't. I work full-time again. I have friends who show up. I have evenings where the only sound is the ocean in the distance, and Amelia's laughter from the next room. Some nights I still wake up and feel the old fear, that I was too soft, that I would lose everything. Then I remember the emails, the solicitor's quiet competence, the day in mediation when I finally said the truth out loud. Revenge, if you can call it that, didn't look like shouting or destruction. It looked like paperwork. It looked like refusing to sign. It looked like choosing the long, quiet road of the law instead of the short, loud road of rage. And at the end of that road was something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the brittle kind that comes from winning. The deep kind that comes from knowing you protected what mattered, told the truth, and walked away with your dignity intact. I still drive past the old street in Lane Cove sometimes. The jacarandas still bloom. The neighbors still wave. But I don't live there anymore. I live somewhere lighter. And every time Amelia falls asleep with her hand in mine, I know the story ended exactly the way it needed to touch.
You know, we've all been through some good times and some real tough ones in life. And today, with a little curiosity in our hearts, we just sat down and listened to one hell of a revenge story that happened to a friend of ours. So, how did you like the story? Definitely let us know in the comments. And listen, if you've ever had a moment where someone treated you like you were nothing, and life eventually proved them wrong, we'd genuinely love to hear your story. Send us your revenge story, your comeback, a voice note, or even a video at knatrevenge@gmail.com. We feature the most powerful ones right here on the channel. Your story deserves to be heard. Email us. We're listening.